My husband begged me not to call him during his crucial business trip to New York because he would be in high-stakes meetings all weekend. So imagine my surprise when I looked up from my menu at Atlanta's most exclusive restaurant and saw him walking through the door, not with a client, but with a woman young enough to be his daughter. He was laughing, wearing the $5,000 custom suit I bought him, and he proceeded to order the most expensive bottle of wine on the list. I did not scream. I did not flip a table. I simply unlocked my phone, opened my banking app, and quietly drained our accounts down to zero while watching him toast to his freedom. If you want to know exactly what a man looks like the moment he realizes he has lost everything he never actually earned, keep listening. My name is Zora Banks, and at 34 years old, I thought I had built an impenetrable life. Before I tell you how I dismantled my husband's existence in 3 minutes, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone exactly who signed the checks. Le Bilboquet in Buckhead is the kind of place where the air smells like old money and expensive perfume. It is the heart of Atlanta's Black elite society, a place where deals are made over Cajun chicken and chilled Sancerre. I was sitting at a corner table, the best seat in the house, reviewing a term sheet for a tech startup I was planning to acquire. I am a venture capitalist. I built my fortune from the ground up, turning a small inheritance from my grandmother into a diversified portfolio worth millions. My husband Darius liked to play the part of the big shot executive. He was the director of the bank's foundation, a charity I funded, but everyone in our circle knew who the real power was. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed on the white tablecloth. It was a text from Darius. The message read, "Just finished the first round of negotiations in Manhattan. Exhausted. Going to grab a quick bite and crash at the hotel. Love you, Z." I smiled at the screen, feeling a twinge of guilt for working late while he was grinding away in New York for our future. I typed back, "So proud of you. Get some rest." I pressed send and took a sip of sparkling water. That was when the air in the restaurant shifted. The hostess stand was near my table and I heard a booming, familiar laugh. It was a laugh I had heard at my wedding, a laugh I heard every morning over coffee. I froze. Slowly I lowered my glass and looked toward the entrance. There he was. Darius. He was not in Manhattan. He was 20 feet away from me in Atlanta, and he was not exhausted. He looked energized, radiant even. Hanging on his arm was a girl who looked like she had just walked out of a music video shoot. She had waist-length braids, skin that glowed under the restaurant lights, and a dress that was little more than a suggestion of fabric. I recognized her immediately from Instagram. Chloe. She was 22, an influencer with a modest following and a reputation for being seen at the right parties. Darius placed his hand on the small of her back, a gesture so possessive and intimate that it made bile rise in my throat. He whispered something in her ear, and she threw her head back, laughing a little too loudly. The hostess, who knew me well, looked from Darius to me with wide, panicked eyes. She moved to block their view of my corner, guiding them to a table on the far side of the patio. Darius was so focused on the girl that he did not even scan the room. He was arrogant. He felt safe. He thought I was at home in our penthouse, waiting like a good wife. I watched them be seated. I watched Darius pull out her chair. I watched him signal the sommelier with a snap of his fingers that made me cringe. He ordered the Chateau Petrus, a $5,000 bottle of wine. I knew the price because I was the one who usually paid the bill. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my face remained stone. I did not move. I did not blink. The waiter poured the wine. Darius swirled it, tasted it, and nodded approval. He raised his glass to Chloe. I could read his lips perfectly. To us. That was the moment the sadness evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This man was drinking my wine, spending my money, and disrespecting my name in my city. He was not just cheating on me. He was mocking me. He thought I was a fool. He thought he was the king of Atlanta because he drove a car I paid for and lived in a house I bought. I reached for my phone again. My hands were perfectly steady. I opened the American Express app. I saw the pending charge for the wine hit the supplementary card I had given him. The platinum card. The one he flashed around town to prove his status. I tapped on his card profile. There was a small button that said freeze card. I pressed it. The app asked for confirmation. I confirmed. Next, I opened our joint checking account. This was the operating account for the household, the one he used for his daily expenses, his gym membership, his lunches, and apparently, his affairs. The balance was sitting at a healthy $250,000. I initiated a transfer. I moved every single cent into my personal, irrevocable trust account, an account he had no access to, no knowledge of, and no legal claim over. Then I went to the savings account. Another transfer. Then the emergency fund. Transfer. Within 90 seconds, Darius Banks was financially destitute. He did not know it yet. He was still smiling, holding Chloe's hand across the table, probably promising her a shopping spree at Phipps Plaza tomorrow. I signaled my waiter. He came over instantly, sensing the tension radiating off me. "I would like to settle my bill," I said quietly. "And please tell the manager that I will be watching the show from right here." The waiter looked confused, but he nodded and hurried away. I sat back and waited. It took 45 minutes. They finished their appetizers, they ordered entrees, lobster for her, Wagyu steak for him, they ordered a second bottle of wine. I watched the numbers tally up in my head. He was spending nearly $10,000 on a Tuesday night dinner with his mistress, confident that his wife was footing the bill. Finally, the check came. I saw the waiter present the leather folder to Darius. Darius smiled that charming, easy smile of his. He did not even look at the total. He just slid the heavy black metal card into the folder and handed it back with a dismissive wave of his hand. He went back to talking to Chloe, probably telling her about the big business deals he was closing in New York. The waiter walked to the terminal. I watched him insert the card. I saw him frown. He pulled it out, wiped the chip on his apron, and tried again. He shook his head. He walked back to the table. I could not hear the words, but I knew the script. "Sir, the card has been declined." Darius laughed. It was a loud, incredulous sound. "That is impossible," he said loud enough for half the patio to hear. "That is a Centurion card. It has no limit. Run it again." The waiter was polite but firm. "I have run it 3 times, sir. The bank has placed a hold on the account." "Do you have another form of payment?" Darius looked annoyed now. He reached into his wallet and pulled out the debit card. The one linked to the joint checking account I had just emptied. "Try this one," he said, his voice dripping with condensation. "And bring me another glass of wine while you sort out your machine issues." The waiter retreated. I took a sip of my water. 5 minutes passed. The waiter returned. He was not alone this time. The manager was with him. This was never a good sign. "Mr. Banks?" The manager said, his voice low. "This card has also been declined for insufficient funds." Darius stood up. His chair scraped violently against the patio stones. "Insufficient funds? Do you know who I am? Do you know who my wife is?" I almost laughed out loud. He was playing the "Do you know who my wife is" card while cheating on his wife. The irony was suffocating. "There must be a mistake with the bank's system," Darius announced, playing to the audience now. People were staring. Chloe looked mortified. She shrank down in her chair, pulling her phone out, pretending to be busy. "I will call and get this sorted out right now," Darius said. He pulled out his phone. My phone rang. It was sitting on the table in front of me, screen up. The name husband flashed brightly. I let it ring, once, twice, 3 times. I watched him across the patio. He was pacing back and forth, running a hand through his hair, getting frustrated. I picked up the phone. I did not bring it to my ear immediately, I just held it. Hello, Darius barked into his phone. Zora, pick up. I pressed the accept button and put the phone to my ear. I kept my eyes fixed on the back of his head. Zora, thank God, he said, his voice dropping to a frantic whisper. Listen. Something is wrong with the bank. I am trying to pay for a client dinner, and the cards are not working. You need to call the private banker right now. It is embarrassing. I have the CEO of Techstar here. He was lying to me in real time. He was looking at a 22-year-old Instagram model and calling her a CEO. I took a deep breath. My voice was calm, ice cold. I am looking at the transaction history right now, Darius. Good, fix it, he hissed. Transfer some money. I need 5,000 cleared immediately. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Darius turned around. He must have felt my gaze. His eyes scanned the restaurant. They swept past the bar, past the hostess stand, and then they locked onto me. The color drained from his face so fast, it looked like his soul had left his body. He dropped the hand holding the phone to his side, but he didn't hang up. He just stared. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I spoke into the phone, watching his lips tremble. I see the problem, Darius, I said. Zora, he stammered. His voice was tinny, coming through the phone and echoing across the quiet restaurant patio. Zora, wait. I can explain. I don't think you can, I said. You see, the bank didn't make a mistake. I locked the cards. Zora, please. He took a step toward me. Chloe grabbed his arm, looking confused and terrified. He shook her off violently. And I moved the money. I continued. All of it. The checking, the savings, the investment accounts. Baby, listen to me, he pleaded, walking faster now, ignoring the manager who was trying to block his path. This isn't what it looks like. She is an intern. We were discussing. I cut him off. You asked for $5,000. Yes. Just unlock the card, Zora. We can talk about this at home. Please. Everyone is looking. I don't have $5,000 for you, I said. Zora. He shouted now, just 10 feet away from my table. I looked him dead in the eyes. I looked at the sweat beading on his forehead. I looked at the fear. I am sorry. I said, my voice loud and clear enough for the tables around us to hear. I don't know anyone named Darius. I ended the call. I placed the phone down. I picked up my napkin, dabbed my mouth, and stood up. Darius stood frozen. The manager stepped in front of him, flanked by 2 large security guards who had materialized from the shadows. Sir, we need to settle this bill, the manager said, or we will be forced to call the authorities. Theft of services is a serious offense. Darius looked at me. His eyes were begging. He looked at Chloe. She was already gathering her purse, looking for an exit. He looked at the bill in the waiter's hand. I walked past him. I was close enough to smell his cologne, the cologne I bought him for his birthday. He reached out a hand to grab my arm. Don't touch me, I said. He flinched back as if he had been burned. Zora, how am I supposed to pay this? He whispered. I didn't stop walking. I didn't look back. I walked straight out the front door to the valet stand where my car was waiting. As I drove away, I saw the blue lights of a police cruiser reflecting in my rearview mirror, turning into the restaurant parking lot. I drove straight to the penthouse. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, efficient fury. I had about 30 minutes before he figured out a way home. Chloe wouldn't pay for him. I knew her type. She didn't have $5,000, and even if she did, she wasn't spending it on a married man who just got his credit card declined. He would have to call his mother or his brother or beg the police for leniency. That gave me time. I pulled into the private garage. I took the elevator up. The penthouse was silent. It was a sprawling, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I had bought this place 3 years ago. Darius had insisted his name be on the deed for appearances, but I had made him sign a document acknowledging that the down payment and mortgage payments came solely from my separate funds. He thought it was just paperwork. He was about to find out it was a weapon. I went to the master bedroom. I grabbed his suitcases. Not the Louis Vuitton ones, those were mine. I grabbed the old gym bags he had when I met him. I started throwing things in. Clothes, shoes, his watch collection. I didn't fold anything. I didn't care if things broke. I dragged the bags to the balcony. It had started to rain, a heavy, cold Atlanta downpour. I threw the bags over the railing onto the lower terrace garden. Then I went to the smart home panel on the wall. I accessed the user settings. User Darius. Status admin. Action delete. I changed the master passcode. I changed the Wi-Fi password. I engaged the deadlock on the front door. My phone started ringing. It was his mother. Mama Estelle. Of course he had called his mother. I ignored it. Then a text from his brother's wife, Julianne. Then a call from an unknown number, probably the restaurant or the police station. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. A cheap bottle because the good stuff was gone. I sat on the white sofa and waited. It took 40 minutes. I heard the elevator ding in the hallway. I heard his heavy footsteps running to the door. He tried the code. Beep, beep, beep. Error. He tried again. Beep, beep, beep. Error. He started pounding on the door. Zora. Open this door. Zora. I know you are in there. I took a sip of wine. I did not move. Zora. This is my house too. You can't lock me out. Open the goddamn door. I picked up my phone and opened the app for the building's security. I pressed the intercom button so my voice would project into the hallway. Darius, I said. He stopped pounding. Zora, baby, please. Let me in. It is raining. I had to walk 3 blocks to get a cab. My cards aren't working. The house is listed for sale. Darius, I said. What? What are you talking about? I called my realtor while I was driving home. We are listing it as a pocket listing for a cash investor I know. He is making an offer in the morning. Since I paid for the house and I have the receipts, you are going to sign the quitclaim deed tomorrow, or I will release the photos of you and Chloe to the board of the foundation. You wouldn't, he gasped. That would ruin me. Zora, that is my job. That is my reputation. You ruined your reputation when you decided to step out on the woman who funds your life, I said. Your clothes are in the garden. It is raining pretty hard, so I suggest you go get them before your silk suits are ruined. Zora, please. Where am I supposed to go? I disconnected the intercom. I watched on the security camera feed as he slumped against the door, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, head in his hands. He looked small. He looked pathetic. Then his phone lit up. He looked at it. He stood up, kicked the door once in frustration, and headed for the elevator. I knew where he was going. He was going to Mama Estelle's house, the Hive. The place where he was the golden prince who could do no wrong. They would rally around him. They would tell him I was crazy, that I was jealous, that I was a bitter woman who didn't know how to keep a man. They had no idea that I wasn't just kicking him out. I was preparing to burn their entire world down, because Darius wasn't the only one who had been lying to me. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Julianne, his sister-in-law. Text. You are making a huge mistake. Darius is just a man. Men have needs. You are destroying this family over a misunderstanding. Fix this before Mama Estelle gets involved. I laughed. A cold, humorless sound in the empty apartment. They thought Mama Estelle was the threat. They thought I should be afraid of a 65-year-old woman who wore too much jewelry and judged everyone's cooking. I typed a reply to Julianne. Reply, you might want to worry less about my marriage and more about the fact that I just bought the promissory note on your spa's business loan. Rent is due on the 1st, Julianne. Don't be late. I hit send. The war had just begun, and unlike them, I had the ammunition to finish it. The summons to my mother-in-law's house arrived via a text message from Darius that simply said, "We need to settle this like adults, be at Mama's at 10. I almost laughed at the audacity of it. He was summoning me to a tribunal, as if I were a wayward teenager who had missed curfew and not the woman who had single-handedly financed the lifestyle of every single person sitting in that living room. I drove my Porsche over to the sprawling brick estate in Cascade Heights. I knew the route well because I had driven it every month for 5 years to drop off checks for the mortgage, the landscaping, and the private nurses for Darius's father. I parked in the driveway behind Darius's car, which I noticed was a rental, since his keys were currently locked inside a house he could no longer enter. I walked to the front door, but I did not knock. I still had a key. I unlocked the heavy oak door and stepped into the foyer. The air smelled of potpourri and judgment. They were all there waiting for me in the formal living room. Mama Estelle sat in her high-backed velvet armchair like a queen holding court. Darius stood behind her, his hand resting on the back of her chair, looking for all the world like a wounded prince. Julianne, my sister-in-law, was perched on the sofa next to her husband Marcus. She held a cup of tea and looked at me with an expression that was half fear and half smug satisfaction. I walked into the center of the room and did not sit down. I wanted to tower over them. I wanted them to crane their necks to look at me. Mama Estelle did not wait for pleasantries. She slammed her hand down on the side table, rattling the porcelain figurines I had bought her for Christmas. "You have lost your mind, Zora. Who do you think you are, locking my son out of his own home and embarrassing him in front of the entire city?" I looked at her calmly. "I am the woman who was humiliated in a restaurant while your son spent my money on a girl who is barely out of college." "That is irrelevant," Estelle shouted. Her voice was shrill. "He is a man, Zora. Men have needs, men have appetites. If he looked elsewhere, it is because his home was cold. You are always working. You are always traveling. You are chasing deals while he is sitting at home alone. What did you expect would happen?" I stared at her. The gaslighting was breathtaking. I was working to pay for the roof over her head. I was traveling to secure the funds that paid for the very chair she was sitting in. "So it is my fault he cheated?" I asked, my voice low and dangerous. "It is your fault you humiliated him," Estelle countered. "You stripped him of his dignity. You declined his cards. You threw his clothes in the mud. You acted like a street thug, not a wife. A wife protects her husband's reputation. A wife covers his flaws. You exposed him." Darius finally spoke up, his voice gaining strength from his mother's defense. "She is right, Zora. You overreacted. It was a dinner. Just a dinner. But you had to go nuclear. You had to prove you hold the purse strings. You love holding that over my head, don't you?" I looked at Darius, and then I looked at his father, Pops, who was sitting quietly in the corner in his wheelchair. He looked frail but healthy. His skin had a good color. His breathing was steady. I turned back to Estelle. "Do you remember 5 years ago when the doctor said Pops needed a triple bypass and a valve replacement? Do you remember the insurance company denying the claim because it was a pre-existing condition?" Estelle narrowed her eyes. "Do not bring him into this. I am bringing him into this," I said, my voice rising just a fraction. "Because I remember sitting in this very room while you cried and said you did not know how you would bury your husband. I remember Darius looking at his shoes because he did not have a dime to his name." "Who wrote the check, Estelle?" She looked away, her jaw tight. "Who wrote the check?" I repeated louder. "You did," she muttered. $200,000, I said. "I wired it directly to the hospital the next morning. I paid for the best cardiac surgeon in the state. I paid for the private recovery room. I paid for the 3 months of in-home care. The heart beating in that man's chest right now is beating because I paid for it." The room went silent. Even Julianne stopped sipping her tea. "And that is not all," I continued, pacing slowly in front of them. "Who paid off the lien on this house when Darius's brother Marcus gambled away the property tax money?" I looked at Marcus, who shrank back into the sofa. "I did. $50,000. Who paid for your hip replacement, Estelle? Who paid for the new roof? Who paid for the Mercedes sitting in the driveway?" "That is what family does," Estelle snapped, though her voice lacked its earlier fire. We help each other. You have been blessed financially, Zora. It is your duty to share that blessing. My duty? I laughed a cold, humorless sound. My duty is to a partner who respects me. My duty is not to finance a man who lies to my face and parades his mistress around town on my dime. You call me cold. You call me absent. I was working to keep this entire family afloat. And how do you repay me? You introduce him to her. I looked directly at Julianne. She flinched, spilling a little tea on her saucer. I know you knew Julianne, I said. I saw the likes on Instagram. I saw the comments. You have been encouraging this. Julianne opened her mouth to protest, but Darius cut her off. He stepped out from behind his mother's chair. He buttoned his jacket, trying to regain some semblance of authority. Stop throwing money in our faces, Zora, he said. We get it. You are rich. You are the big boss. But that does not matter anymore. Because I spoke to a lawyer this morning. I raised an eyebrow. A lawyer? With what money, Darius? I found a way, he said, his chin jutting out defiantly. And he explained some things to me. Very interesting things. Do tell, I said, crossing my arms. We never signed a post-nuptial agreement, he said. We signed a prenup, yes, but that only covered what you brought into the marriage. It did not cover the assets acquired during the marriage. He took a step toward me, a smirk playing on his lips. The tech company you sold last year, the real estate portfolio you built, the investment accounts, all of that was created while we were married. That makes it marital property, Zora. In the state of Georgia, that is subject to equitable division. Mama Estelle sat up straighter, a gleam of greed entering her eyes. Is that true, Darius? She asked. It is absolutely true, Mama, he said, never taking his eyes off me. Half of everything she made in the last 7 years belongs to me. It is compensation for my contribution to the marriage. Contribution, I asked. What contribution? You ran a charity foundation that I fully funded. Your salary came from my donations. I supported your career, he shouted. I managed the household. I was the face of the Banks family while you were in boardrooms. That has value, Zora. And the court will agree. He began to pace, looking more confident with every step. And there is more, he said. My lawyer says what you did yesterday, freezing the accounts, locking me out of the marital home, leaving me with no access to funds, that is financial abuse. It is spousal cruelty. We are going to sue you, Zora. We are going to sue you for half the assets plus damages for emotional distress. Julianne set her tea down and smiled. It was a nasty, triumphant little smile. It looks like you are not as smart as you think you are, Zora, she said softly. Estelle clapped her hands together once. Well, there it is. You thought you could throw my son away like trash, but the law protects him. You will pay him what he is owed, and you will apologize for this disrespect. I looked at them. Really looked at them. They were vultures. They had picked my bones clean for years, and now that I had cut off the supply, they were trying to tear the carcass apart. They felt no shame. They felt no gratitude. They only felt entitlement. Darius stopped pacing and stood right in front of me. So here is the deal, Zora, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. You unlock my cards. You put the money back. You give me the deed to the penthouse. And maybe I do not drag you through a public divorce that will ruin your reputation with your investors. Maybe I settle for just 40%. He thought he had won. He thought he had me cornered. He thought the law was a blunt instrument he could swing at my head. I looked at him, and I felt nothing. The last shred of sadness I had over the end of our marriage evaporated in that room. You are going to sue me for financial abuse, I asked, my voice level. If you do not cooperate, yes, Darius said. And you think half of my assets belong to you because we did not sign a postnup. That is the law, Zora. I nodded slowly. I reached into my purse. Everyone flinched as if I were pulling out a weapon. I pulled out a small, sleek black phone. It was my business phone. I typed a quick message to my chief of legal counsel. It was 3 words. Execute Order 66. It was a little inside joke we had, but the meaning was deadly serious. Then I looked back at Darius. You should have hired a better lawyer, baby, I said. Or maybe you should have actually read the documents you signed over the years instead of just looking for the line where you get your allowance. What are you talking about? Darius asked, his confidence wavering slightly. You are right about one thing, I said. We did not sign a post-nup. But you are forgetting something very important about the structure of my business. I took a step toward him, forcing him to step back. I do not own those companies, Darius. I do not own the real estate portfolio. I do not even own the cash in the investment accounts. His brow furrowed. What? Of course you do. Your name is on everything. My name is on the management documents, I said. But the assets, the equity, the capital, they are all held in an irrevocable dynasty trust. A trust established by my grandmother 10 years ago before we ever met. The room went deathly quiet. I am just the trustee, Darius. I am a salaried employee of the trust. My salary is generous, yes, but it is just income. And since we kept our finances separate aside from the joint account I just drained, I have practically zero marital assets for you to claim. Darius shook his head. That is a lie. You are lying. You built those companies. I built them with the trust's money, I said, which means the growth belongs to the trust, not to me, and certainly not to you. The trust documents state very clearly that no beneficiary's spouse has any claim to the assets under any circumstances, including divorce or death. I turned to Estelle. You remember my grandmother, don't you, Estelle? You used to call her that stingy old witch because she drove a Ford when she could afford a Bentley. Estelle looked pale. She was a mean woman, she whispered. She was a smart woman, I corrected. She knew men like Darius existed. She knew people like you existed. She set up the trust specifically to protect the family wealth from parasites. She called it the predator clause. I looked back at Darius. His face was gray. So go ahead, I said. Sue me. Sue the trust. My legal team costs $2,000 an hour, and they are paid by the trust to protect the assets. You have a lawyer you paid with a credit card I assume you stole from your brother. Let's see how long he lasts against a team of 12 corporate litigators. Darius slumped. His shoulders collapsed. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving just a scared, greedy boy. But the house, he stammered. The penthouse. Owned by the trust, I said. You were a guest who has overstayed his welcome. I turned to leave. I had said what I needed to say. I had seen the look on their faces. It was enough for now. But Zora Estelle called out, her voice trembling. What are we supposed to do? The mortgage on this house is due next week. The property taxes are coming up. Marcus has debts. I stopped at the door. I looked back at the room full of people who had taken everything and given nothing. I suggest you get jobs, I said. And Darius, I added, looking at my husband one last time. You mentioned financial abuse. You might want to be careful with that term. Because my auditors are currently looking through the books of the bank's foundation, and if they find even $1 out of place, I won't just divorce you. I will put you in federal prison. I walked out of the house. I got into my car. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the kill. I had dropped the bomb. But I knew them. They wouldn't give up. They would get desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. I checked my phone. A text from my private investigator. Text. I found the link between Julianne and Chloe. You are going to want to see this. I smiled. The family meeting was just the opening skirmish. The real war was about to get much dirtier. And I was ready to get mud on my boots. I sat in my car at the end of the long driveway, the engine idling, watching the rain distort the lights of the house I had just left. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles had turned the color of ash. I had just decimated my husband and his mother with the truth about my finances, but the vibration of my phone in the passenger seat told me the night was far from over. It was the message from my private investigator, a man I paid a retainer that cost more than most people's annual salary. He was worth every penny, because he did not just find dirt, he found the entire landfill. I picked up the phone and opened the secure file he had sent. The subject line was simply, "The Connection." I swiped open the first image and felt the air leave my lungs as if I had been punched. It was a photograph from a family reunion dated 4 years ago. It was a casual backyard barbecue scene, red Solo cups and paper plates. In the center of the frame, laughing with her arm draped possessively around a teenage girl, was my sister-in-law, Julianne. The girl she was hugging was Chloe, the mistress, the woman who had been eating lobster on my dime at Le Bilboquet. I zoomed in. They looked comfortable, familiar. They looked like family. I scrolled to the next document. It was a genealogy report. Chloe wasn't just some random girl Darius had met at a club. She was Julianne's second cousin from her mother's side in Savannah. They had grown up spending summers together. This wasn't a random affair. This was a setup. I read the text logs the investigator had recovered. They were a masterclass in manipulation. Julianne. He is complaining about Zora again. Says she is flying to Tokyo for a week. He is lonely. Go to the gym he goes to. Wear the gray set I bought you. Chloe. I don't know, Julie. He seems really married. Julianne. He is married to a bank account, not a woman. He needs attention. And we need the capital. Once he divorces her, he gets half. Do you know what half of Zora Banks's estate looks like? It looks like freedom, Chloe. It looks like saving the business. I felt a cold chill, and that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Julianne. The woman I had welcomed into my family. The woman whose hand I had held when she had a miscarriage. The woman whose failing business ventures I had politely declined to invest in because the numbers never made sense. She hadn't just watched my marriage implode. She had handed her cousin the detonator. I drove away from the curb, merging into the Atlanta traffic, my mind working like a microprocessor. I needed to understand the motive. Greed was always the motive, but I needed the specifics. I pulled up the dossier on Julianne's business, a chain of high-end day spas called Lux Haven. On Instagram, it was all marble countertops, eucalyptus steam rooms, and influencers posting selfies in white robes. But the financials told a different story. My investigator had pulled her credit report and business filings. Lux Haven was hemorrhaging money. She was 3 months behind on the lease for her Buckhead location. She had taken out predatory merchant cash advances just to make payroll. She was drowning in debt, roughly $400,000 of it. She needed a bailout, and since I had refused to pour my money into her sinking ship, she decided to sink my marriage instead. She figured if Darius got a settlement, he would be easy to manipulate. He would give her the money she needed to plug the holes in her vanity project. I laughed out loud in the quiet cabin of my car. It was a dark, dangerous sound. She had bet everything on a horse that wasn't even in the race. She didn't know about the trust. She didn't know Darius would walk away with nothing. And now she had exposed herself to a woman who traded companies like baseball cards. I did not go home to my empty penthouse. Instead, I drove to my office in Midtown. The building was quiet, the city lights twinkling below like a sea of diamonds. I sat at my desk, the glass surface cool under my fingers, and I made a phone call. It was late, but my private banker, Mr. Sterling, answered on the second ring. He managed my personal liquidity and knew better than to ask why I was calling at 11 o'clock at night. Mr. Sterling, I said, skipping the pleasantries. I need you to look up a commercial loan. The debtor is Lux Haven LLC. The guarantor is Julianne Banks. I heard the typing of keys on the other end. One moment, Mrs. Banks. Yes, I see it here. It is a distressed asset. It is currently held by a mid-tier lender that specializes in high-risk commercial debt. They have actually packaged it for sale because it is non-performing. They are looking to offload it to a collection agency. Buy it, I said. There was a pause. I beg your pardon, I want to buy the debt. I said, my voice steady. I want to buy the promissory note. I want to be the holder of the mortgage on her commercial spaces and the primary creditor for her business loans. Buy it all, Mrs. Banks. That is a terrible investment, Sterling advised gently. The business is insolvent. You will never recoup the principal. I am not looking for a return on investment, Mr. Sterling, I said. I am looking for leverage. How fast can we close? Since it is already packaged for sale and you have the cash reserves liquid, we could execute the purchase agreement by tomorrow morning. We can wire the funds as soon as the markets open. Do it, I said. And Sterling, do not notify the debtor of the transfer of ownership until I tell you. I want to deliver the news myself. Understood, Mrs. Banks. I will have the papers ready for your digital signature in an hour. I hung up the phone and swiveled my chair to look out at the skyline. I owned her. By tomorrow morning, every towel, every bottle of lotion, every massage table in her precious spa would belong to me. She had tried to break my home to save her business. Now I held the deed to her livelihood in the palm of my hand. My phone buzzed again. It was Julianne. The audacity was almost impressive. I let it ring for a moment, composing my voice, putting on the mask of the confused, grieving wife. Then I answered. Julianne. I asked, making my voice sound small and tired. Zora. Oh my God! She gushed, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. I just left Mama Estelle's house. I am so worried about you. That scene it was intense. Are you okay? I am just trying to process everything I lied. It feels like my whole world is falling apart. I know, honey, I know she cooed. Listen, I know you are angry. You have every right to be. But you have to understand Darius is he is lost. He made a mistake. A horrible mistake. But throwing him out? Cutting him off? That is extreme, Zora. He is family. He cheated on me. Julianne, I said, testing her. With some girl named Chloe. I could hear the hesitation, the split-second calculation on the other end. I know, she said softly. And that is terrible. But men, they have weaknesses. Darius loves you. He really does. He is just under a lot of pressure living in your shadow. Maybe if you forgave him, if you helped him get back on his feet, you could work through this. You have so much money, Zora. Does it really matter if he spent a little of it? You can always make more. But a marriage, that is sacred. I closed my eyes, savoring the rage that boiled in my veins. She was still running the play. She was trying to shepherd the sheep back into the pen so she could shear it. She needed Darius back in my good graces, back in access to my accounts, so he could funnel cash to her. You make some good points, Julianne, I said. I really need to think about what is important. Exactly, she said, sounding relieved. You are a smart woman. You know that destroying the family won't make you happy. Look, why don't we meet for lunch tomorrow, just us girls? I can come by your office. We can talk strategy. I can help you figure out how to handle Mama Estelle. I smiled in the darkness of my office. It was a predator's smile. I would love that, Julianne, I said. Come by at noon. I think we can find a solution that works for everyone. Great. I will see you then. Get some rest, Zora. I hung up. Rest. I didn't need rest. I needed the sun to rise so I could sign the papers Mr. Sterling was sending over. The next morning, I was in my office by 8. I signed the digital documents transferring the debt of Lux Haven LLC to my personal holding company. I watched the confirmation email come through. The wire transfer was complete. I was officially the owner of Julianne's debt. At noon, Julianne breezed into my office. She looked perfect, dressed in a pastel suit, carrying a designer bag that I knew she had charged to a card she couldn't pay off. She leaned in to hug me and I let her. I smelled her expensive perfume and knew it was bought with money she didn't have. She sat down opposite me, crossing her legs elegantly. So she started, her face arranged in a mask of concern. Have you spoken to Darius today? He is a mess, Zora. He slept on his mother's couch. It is breaking my heart. I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. I haven't spoken to him, Julianne. But I have been doing a lot of thinking about family, about loyalty. That is good, she nodded encouragingly. That is the first step. And I have been looking into investments, I continued. You know, trying to diversify, she perked up. Oh, what kind of investments? Distressed assets, I said. Businesses that are failing because of poor management. I find them fascinating. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh, well, that sounds intense. It is, I agreed. Actually, I made an acquisition this morning. Would you like to see it? Sure, she said, though she looked confused. I slid a file folder across the polished desk toward her. It wasn't the photos of her and Chloe. Not yet. I wanted to see her face when she realized the financial noose was around her neck first. She opened the folder. It was the notice of assignment of debt. She read the first line. Then she read the second. Her brow furrowed. She looked up at me, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. Zora, I don't understand. This is my loan. For the spa. It is, I said calmly. But why is your name on it? Because I bought it, Julianne. I bought the note from your lender this morning. She stared at me, her brain trying to catch up. You bought my debt, why to help me? Oh my God, Zora, that is... I didn't let her finish the thought. I didn't let her think for 1 second that this was an act of benevolence. I bought it because you are in default, I said. You haven't made a full payment in 4 months. The previous lender was preparing to foreclose, and since I am now the lien holder, I have decided to accelerate the process. Her face went white. Foreclose. Zora, what are you talking about? You can't foreclose on me. We are family. Family. I repeated the word, tasting it. Like the family in this photo, I slid the second photo across the desk, the one of her and Chloe at the barbecue in Savannah. She looked at the photo. She looked at Chloe's face. She looked at her own arm around the girl. She stopped breathing. Chloe is your cousin, I stated. Your second cousin from Savannah. You introduced her to Darius 6 months ago at a mixer you hosted. You told him she was new in town and needed a mentor. Julianne was trembling now. The paper shook in her hands. Zora, I didn't know they would... Don't lie to me. I slammed my hand on the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I have the text, Julianne. I have the messages where you told her which lingerie to buy. I have the messages where you told him I was too busy to notice. I have the messages where you calculated how much my alimony payments would help your cash flow. She shrank back into her chair, looking small and terrified. Tears welled up in her eyes, real tears this time born of fear. Zora, please, she whispered. I was desperate. I was going to lose the business. I didn't want to hurt you. I just needed... You needed my money, I finished. And you thought the best way to get it was to sell my husband to your cousin. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was just a checkbook. I stood up and walked around the desk. I stood over her. Here is what is going to happen, Julianne. I am calling the note due. You owe me $412,000, payable immediately. I don't have it, she cried. You know I don't have it. Then I am taking the spa, I said cold and final. I am taking the equipment. I am taking the lease. I am taking the brand. And I am going to liquidate it all to recoup my investment. No, you can't. That is my life. That is everything I have built. You built it on sand, Julianne, and then you tried to wash my house away to save it. She stood up, reaching for my arm. Zora, please. I will do anything. I will testify against Darius. I will tell everyone it was my idea. I will fix this. Just don't take my business. I looked at her hand on my arm, the same hand that had patted my back while stabbing me. It is too late for that, I said. You picked a side. You picked the wrong side. I went to my office door and opened it. My assistant was waiting outside. Please escort Ms. Banks out, I said. And call the locksmith. We need to change the locks on the Buckhead Spa location within the hour. Julianne looked at me one last time. There was no friendship in her eyes anymore. Just hatred and ruin. You are a monster, she hissed. I smiled. No, Julianne. I am a venture capitalist, and I just closed a very aggressive deal. Now get out! She stormed out sobbing. I watched her go. 1 down, 2 to go. I walked back to my desk and picked up my phone. I had a notification. It was from the forensic accountant I had hired to look into the foundation's books. The message read, "We found the transfers. It is worse than we thought. He didn't just spend the money, he laundered it." I sat down. The game had just changed. Darius wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal, and I was the only one who could either save him or bury him. I picked up the phone to call the FBI. I thought I had seen the depths of their depravity when I bought Julianne's debt, but I had underestimated the desperation of a man who has lost his golden ticket. The notification came through while I was in the middle of a quarterly review with the board of directors for my venture capital firm. My assistant, a woman who usually had ice water in her veins, walked into the glass-walled conference room with a look of sheer panic on her face. She placed her tablet on the table in front of me and slid it forward without saying a word. On the screen was a TikTok video that was already trending with 2 million views. The caption read, "Survivor Series Escaping the Black Widow." I pressed play. The video opened with Chloe. She was not wearing the designer dress she had worn to Le Bilboquet. She was wearing an oversized gray hoodie looking small and fragile with no makeup, and her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She sat cross-legged on a beige sofa I recognized immediately as the one in Mama Estelle's living room. Darius was sitting next to her looking down at his hands, playing the role of the broken, battered husband to perfection. "Hi guys," Chloe whispered, wiping away a non-existent tear. "I did not want to make this video. I really did not. But the harassment has gotten so bad that I have to speak my truth." She took a shaky breath and looked at Darius. He squeezed her hand. "It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award." "You guys see the glitz and the glam," Chloe continued. "You see the private jets and the penthouses. But you do not see what happens behind closed doors. You do not see the control. You do not see the abuse." She looked directly into the camera. "I fell in love with Darius because he was trapped. He was trapped in a marriage with a woman who is a monster. Zora Banks is not a girl boss. She is a tyrant. She controls every dime he spends. She tracks his location. She isolated him from his friends. She even threatened his mother." Darius looked up, then his eyes red-rimmed. "She locked me out of my own home," he said, his voice cracking. "It is raining in Atlanta, and she threw my clothes off the balcony like I was trash. I built that life with her. I supported her while she built her empire. And the second I asked for a little respect, she tried to destroy me." Chloe nodded vigorously. "She is jealous because she is older. She is bitter because she cannot keep a man happy. So she uses her money as a weapon. She calls it financial independence, but we call it financial violence. She left us stranded at a restaurant with a $10,000 bill just to humiliate us. Who does that? What kind of evil person does that?" The video ended with a plea for donations to their Cash App to help with legal fees against the billionaire bully. I stared at the black screen. The room was silent. The board members, men and women who controlled billions of dollars in assets, were looking at me. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked concerned. One of them, a man named Sterling, who had backed my first fund, cleared his throat. "Zora," he said quietly. "The stock for the tech holdings is down 3% in pre-market trading. The hashtags are trending. Cancel Zora is the #1 topic in Atlanta right now." I looked at my phone. My notifications were a blur of hatred. The comments section was a cesspool. People who did not know me, people who had never built anything in their lives, were tearing me apart. They called me a predator. They called me a bitter old woman. They said I deserved to die alone. They praised Darius for finding love with someone younger and softer. It was a coordinated attack. It was a smear campaign designed to hit me where it hurt the most, my reputation. In my world, reputation is currency. If investors think you are unstable, if they think you are a liability, the money dries up. Darius knew that. He knew he could not win in a court of law, so he was trying to win in the court of public opinion. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. "Gentlemen, ladies," I said, smoothing the front of my suit. "I apologize for the interruption. We will reconvene in 48 hours. By then this will be handled," Zora Sterling warned. "You need to issue a statement. You need to get ahead of this. You need to deny the allegations." I looked at him. A statement. A statement is what you issue when you have made a mistake. I have not made a mistake. I am going to make an example. I walked out of the conference room and went straight to my private office. I did not go to Twitter. I did not go to Instagram. I did not type out a defensive rant about how I paid for his father's heart surgery or his brother's bail money. That is what they wanted. They wanted a catfight. They wanted to drag me down into the mud where they lived. Instead, I locked the door and sat at my desk. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water. My hand did not shake. I watched the view count on the video climb. 2.5 million. 3 million. They were monetizing my destruction. My phone rang. It was Darius. He was calling from a blocked number because I had blocked his cell. I answered. "Hello, Darius," I said. "Did you see it?" he asked. He did not sound sad anymore. He sounded triumphant. "The internet is not on your side, Zora. You cannot buy them. They hate you." I said nothing. I let him talk. "This can all go away," he said. "Just unlock the accounts, transfer 5 million to an account I control, and give me the house. If you do that, Chloe deletes the video. We issue a statement saying it was a misunderstanding. We say we are working on our marriage amicably. Your stock price goes back up. Everyone wins. You are blackmailing me," I stated. "I am negotiating." He laughed. "You taught me that. Leverage right. I have the leverage now. The world thinks you are an abuser. How many LPs are going to pull out of your next fund if this keeps trending? How many gala invites are you going to lose? Just pay me, Zora. It is pocket change to you." I looked at the clock on my wall. It was 1 o'clock. My forensic accountant was due in 5 minutes. "Darius," I said softly, "you have made a very big miscalculation." "Oh yeah. What is that?" "You think I care about what strangers think of me. I don't. I care about facts. And the fact is, you just admitted to extortion on a recorded line." He went silent. "But that is the least of your problems," I continued. "You should enjoy the likes and the comments, baby. Soak it up. Read every single one, because where you are going, they do not allow cell phones." I hung up. A moment later, my assistant opened the door. "Mr. Henderson is here," she said. Mr. Henderson was a forensic accountant who used to work for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. He was a man who saw numbers as a language, and right now, he was holding a story I was dying to read. He walked in carrying a thick binder. He did not look happy. He looked like a man who had seen a crime scene. "Ms. Banks," he said, sitting down without smiling. "We need to talk about the Banks Foundation." I sat forward. "Tell me." We did a deep dive into the last 3 years of financials. He began opening the binder. On the surface, everything looked fine. The donations came in from your trust, and the grants went out to various community organizations. But when we looked at the vendor list, we found some anomalies. "Anomalies, shell companies," Henderson said. "There are 4 companies that have been billing the foundation for consulting services, event planning, and logistics. They have billed over $3 million in the last 24 months. And let me guess," I said, feeling the cold rage settle in my stomach. "These companies do not exist." "They exist on paper," Henderson said. "But they have no employees, no offices, and their registered agents are all located in the same P.O. box in Savannah, Georgia." Savannah, Julianne's hometown, Chloe's hometown. "We traced the bank accounts associated with these shell companies," Henderson continued. "The money goes in from the foundation, and within 24 hours it is withdrawn or transferred. We followed the trail. It ends up in 3 places: an offshore account in the Caymans, a crypto wallet, and a personal account at a local credit union." Whose name is on the credit union account? I asked, though I already knew. Estelle Banks Henderson said. Your mother-in-law. I closed my eyes. They weren't just living off my generosity. They were stealing from sick children. They were stealing from scholarship funds. They were stealing from cancer research. The foundation was supposed to be my legacy, my way of giving back to the community that raised me. And Darius had turned it into a piggy bank for his mother and his mistress. And the offshore account? I asked. Darius Banks Henderson confirmed. And here's the kicker. He used the corporate credit card of the foundation to pay for the dinner at Le Bilboquet. Or he tried to. That is why the card was declined. It wasn't just because you froze it. It was because the fraud algorithm flagged a $5,000 wine purchase at a restaurant as inconsistent with a charitable organization's mission. I looked at the binder. It was heavy. It was full of wire transfers receipts and bank statements. It was a smoking gun. It was a nuclear bomb. This isn't just embezzlement, Henderson said quietly. This is wire fraud. This is money laundering. This is tax evasion. Because the foundation is a 501c3, this is federal jurisdiction. If we turn this over to the FBI, he is not looking at a slap on the wrist. He is looking at 15 to 20 years, mandatory minimums. I ran my hand over the leather cover of the binder. 15 years. Darius was 36. He would be an old man when he got out. He would miss his nieces and nephews growing up. He would miss his mother's funeral. He would lose everything. I thought about the video. I thought about him holding Chloe's hand, calling me a monster. I thought about him threatening to ruin my business if I didn't pay him off. I thought about Julianne plotting to sell my husband to save her spa. I thought about Mama Estelle wearing diamonds bought with stolen charity money. They had called me a monster. They had told the world I was evil. I looked at Henderson. Is the report complete? I asked. It is rock solid, he said. Good. I stood up. I picked up the binder. It felt light in my hands. Ms. Banks Henderson asked, Do you want me to file the report with the authorities? Not yet, I said. I have a gala to attend tomorrow night. The annual Black Excellence Charity Ball. Darius is supposed to be receiving an award for his work with the foundation. Henderson looked confused. You are going to let him receive the award? I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning. Oh no, Mr. Henderson, I said. I am not going to let him receive the award. I am going to let him walk on stage. I am going to let him smile at the cameras. I am going to let him think he has won. And then I am going to introduce him to the special guests I am bringing. I turned back to him. Call the FBI field office in Atlanta. Tell them I have a case they are going to want to close before the weekend. And tell them to bring handcuffs. I want them waiting in the wings. Henderson nodded slowly, a look of respect dawning on his face. You are going to do it publicly. He tried to destroy me on the internet, I said. I am going to destroy him in reality. I walked out of the office. I had a dress to buy. Something red, something that said I was not mourning. I was celebrating. The smear campaign had dented my stock price for a day. But what I was about to do would fix that. The market loves a strong leader. And nothing says strength like cutting out a cancer before it kills you. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from Instagram. Darius had posted a photo of himself and Chloe captioned New Beginnings. I liked the photo. Enjoy it while it lasts, baby, I whispered. Because tomorrow, your new beginning ends. The conference room in the high-rise office of my legal team was designed to intimidate. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of the Atlanta skyline, but the air inside was kept at a freezing 65 degrees. I sat at the head of the long mahogany table with my hands folded on top of a single manila folder. On my right sat my lead counsel, Mr. Thorne, a man whose hourly rate could purchase a small vehicle. He was calm, silent, and predatory. Across from us sat Darius. He was trying to look like the master of the universe, but I knew the truth. I knew his suit was dry cleaned on a rush order because I had thrown his wardrobe into the rain 2 days ago. I knew the lawyer sitting next to him, a sweaty man named Mr. Gentry was working on a retainer that Darius had secured through a high-interest payday loan because I had frozen every legitimate line of credit he had. Darius leaned back in his chair and smirked. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and arrogance that made my stomach turn. He thought this was a negotiation. He thought we were here to haggle over the price of his silence. He had no idea he was sitting in an execution chamber. "Let us begin," Mr. Gentry said, shuffling a stack of disorganized papers. "My client, Mr. Banks, has suffered significant emotional and reputational damage due to the erratic and vindictive behavior of Mrs. Banks. We are prepared to file a suit for financial abuse and spousal cruelty. However, Mr. Banks is a reasonable man. He is willing to settle this quietly to protect the privacy of both parties." I did not blink. I did not speak. I just watched Darius. He winked at me. It was a small, confident wink that said, "I have you." "Here are our terms." Gentry continued, sliding a piece of paper across the table. "We are requesting a lump sum spousal support payment of $10 million to maintain the marital standard of living. Furthermore, since Zora Capital and its subsidiary Tech Holdings were expanded significantly during the course of the 7-year marriage, we are asserting a claim to 50% of all equity in those entities." Darius cleared his throat and spoke up. "It is only fair, Zora. I consulted on those deals. I was your partner. I sacrificed my own career ambitions to manage our home life so you could build that company. Half of it is mine. We did not sign a post-nuptial agreement regarding the business assets acquired after the wedding. My lawyer says that makes it community property." Thorne looked at the paper. He did not pick it up. He just looked at it as if it were a used napkin. Then he looked at Darius. "Is that all?" Thorne asked. His voice was smooth and deep, like gravel rolling in oil. "We also want the deed to the penthouse," Darius added quickly. "And the Mercedes. And I want a public statement retracting the lies you told about my infidelity. If you do that, I will walk away and let you keep the other half of the company." I looked at Darius. I remembered the day we met. I remembered the day we married. I tried to find a trace of the man I thought I loved in the greedy stranger sitting across from me. There was nothing there. Just avarice and entitlement. Thorne opened his briefcase. He pulled out a single document bound in blue, heavy stock paper. He slid it across the table to Mr. Gentry. "Mr. Banks," Thorne said, "you are operating under a fundamental misunderstanding of the estate. You are under the impression that you are divorcing a wealthy business owner. You are not." Darius frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I see the Forbes articles. I see the bank balances. Zora is worth hundreds of millions." Thorne smiled. It was a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Zora Banks is a salaried employee," Thorne said. "She earns a very comfortable wage of $300,000 a year. That is her income. That is the only money that is considered marital property. And since you spent far more than that on your lifestyle, your mistresses, and your gambling habits, that pot is empty. In fact, you owe the marital estate money." "That is a lie," Darius shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "She owns the company. Her name is on the building." Thorne pointed a manicured finger at the blue document. "Read the incorporation papers, Mr. Gentry. Read the founding charter." Gentry picked up the document. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. I watched the color drain from his face. He started to sweat profusely. He loosened his tie. Mr. Banks Gentry whispered, This says the company is held in trust." "Exactly," Thorne said. Before Zora and Darius ever met Zora's grandmother, Josephine established the Josephine Banks Irrevocable Dynasty Trust. Every asset Zora acquired, every company she started, every piece of real estate she purchased, was capitalized by the trust. I finally spoke. My voice was quiet, but it echoed in the silent room. "My grandmother was a maid, Darius. She scrubbed floors for 50 years, but she was brilliant with money. She bought land when nobody wanted it. She bought stocks when the market crashed. When she died, she left everything to me. But she had one condition." Darius was staring at me, his mouth open. She knew that people like you existed, I continued. She knew that men would come along who wanted the money, not the woman. So she locked it up. She created a trust that I cannot break. I cannot dissolve it. I cannot give it away. And I certainly cannot lose it in a divorce. Thorne picked up the narrative. Technically speaking, Mrs. Banks does not own Zora Capital. The trust owns it. Mrs. Banks is simply the appointed trustee and manager. She has no ownership stake. Therefore, there is no marital asset to divide. The company, the investments, the real estate portfolio, they all belong to a legal entity that existed long before your marriage. You have no claim to it. None. Zero. Darius looked at his lawyer. Tell him he is lying. Tell him that is not legal. Gentry shook his head, looking defeated. It is legal, Darius. It is ironclad. If the trust predates the marriage and the assets were never commingled with personal funds— They were never commingled, Thorne interrupted. We have the forensic accounting to prove it. Every dime of profit went back into the trust accounts. Zora lived off her salary. And you, Mr. Banks, you lived off her generosity. Darius stood up. His chair fell over backward with a loud crash. You tricked me, he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. You lied to me. You let me believe we were building this together. You let me believe I was an owner. I did not lie, I said coldly. I told you I was handling the business. You never asked how it was structured. You never asked to see the books. You were too busy spending the money to ask where it came from. You were too busy buying wine for 20-year-olds to read the fine print. Darius looked wild. He looked around the room as if searching for an exit or a weapon. I want my 10 million, he spat. I know you have cash. I know you have it stashed away. I have nothing for you, I said. The trust documents are specific. Beneficiaries are prohibited from using trust assets to pay settlements to ex-spouses. If I gave you a single cent, I would be violating my fiduciary duty as trustee. I would be removed and sued by the board. My hands are tied, Darius. You planned this, he hissed. You planned this from the beginning. You knew you would leave me. I planned for survival, I corrected him. I planned for the day someone might try to take what my grandmother worked for. I hoped I would never have to use it against my husband. I hoped you were different. But you proved my grandmother right. You proved that you are exactly the kind of predator she warned me about. Thorne closed his folder. The sound was like a gavel striking. So here's where we stand, Mr. Banks. You have no claim to the company. You have no claim to the real estate. You have no claim to the investments. What you do have is a significant amount of debt. Since you admitted to taking out loans and credit cards in your own name to fund your legal defense, that debt is yours alone. Darius sank back down into his chair, ignoring the fact that it was still toppled over. He sat on the floor looking up at me like a child who had dropped his ice cream. But I have nothing, he whispered. I have nothing, Zora. You have your freedom, I said. That is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted to be free to be with Chloe. You wanted to be the big man. Well, now you can be. Go be a man, Darius. Go build your own empire. He looked at Gentry. Do something. Fix this. Gentry packed up his briefcase. I cannot fix this, Mr. Banks. The law is clear. And frankly, my retainer has run out. Unless you can write me another check today, I am removing myself as counsel. Darius looked at me. His eyes filled with tears. Real tears this time. Tears of a man who sees the abyss opening up beneath his feet. Zora, please, he begged. We can fix this. I will sign a post-nup now. I will sign anything. Just don't leave me with nothing. I can't go back to living in an apartment. I can't go back to driving a Honda. I am Darius Banks. People know me. People knew the version of you that I paid for. I said, standing up. That version is dead. The real Darius Banks is sitting on the floor of a lawyer's office, with no job, no wife, and no money. I walked to the door. Thorne followed me. Wait! Darius called out, scrambling to his feet. What about the foundation? I am still the director. I still have a salary there. You can't take that. That is my contract. I stopped. I turned around slowly. A smile touched my lips, but it was the smile of a reaper. "Oh, Darius," I said softly. "I almost forgot. We need to talk about the foundation." His eyes widened. "Why? What about it?" I opened the door and gestured to the hallway. "Because there are two gentlemen waiting in the lobby who would very much like to speak with you about your expense reports," I said. Two men in dark suits stood up as I gestured. They walked toward the conference room. One of them pulled a badge from his jacket pocket. "Darius Banks," the agent said. "We are with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud and embezzlement of charitable funds." Darius looked at me one last time. He looked at the woman who had loved him, the woman who had sheltered him, the woman he had betrayed. "Zora," he whispered, "help me." I looked at him. I looked at the handcuffs the agent was unhooking from his belt. "I am sorry," I said. "My grandmother's trust does not cover bail money." I walked out of the office and into the elevator. I pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I heard the click of metal cuffs locking into place. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. 3 hours after Darius was led away in handcuffs from my lawyer's office, my receptionist buzzed me to say that Julianne was in the lobby. She was not the polished, arrogant woman who had sat in my office just yesterday. She was frantic. She was pacing the marble floors in yesterday's clothes, her hair pulled back in a severe, messy knot, and her eyes wide with the kind of terror that only comes when the facade of your life completely crumbles. I told security to let her up. I wanted to see this. I needed to see this. When the elevator doors opened, Julianne practically ran into my office. She stopped short at the desk, breathing hard, her chest heaving. She looked around as if expecting to see the police waiting for her too. "Zora, please," she gasped, tears already streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "The locks are changed. I went to the spa this morning to get the cash from the safe and my key did not work. There is a notice on the door. My staff is calling me. Clients are standing outside. You have to stop this. You have to unlock the doors." I sat calmly in my leather chair, sipping a cup of herbal tea. I did not offer her a seat. I did not offer her a tissue. "I told you what was going to happen, Julianne," I said, my voice devoid of any sympathy. "You are in default. The asset has been seized. It is standard procedure." She threw her hands up, her bracelets clattering together, bracelets I knew she bought with money she should have used to pay her vendors. "Standard procedure. This is my life, Zora. You are destroying my life because you are mad at Darius. This is petty. It is beneath you." I set my tea down. Petty is sleeping with my husband for a Birkin bag. Petty is plotting to steal my inheritance. Buying a distressed asset and liquidating it to recover capital is just business. And right now your business is worth more to me as scrap metal and sublet leases than it ever was as a going concern. She collapsed into the chair opposite me, burying her face in her hands. "I am ruined," she sobbed. "Marcus is going to leave me. Everyone is going to know I am a failure. Please, Zora, I am begging you. Is there anything I can do? Anything at all, I will pay you back. I will work for you. Just give me the keys back." I watched her cry. I waited until the sobs subsided into sniffles. Then I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the desk. "There is one thing," I said softly. Her head snapped up. Hope flared in her eyes, desperate and pathetic. "What?" "Name it." "I want the phone," I said. She blinked, confused. "My phone. I want your phone, Julianne. I want the passcode. And I want you to sit there while I download every single text message, every email, and every voice note between you and Darius for the last 2 years. She hesitated. Her eyes darted to her purse. "That is..." "Zora, that is private. There are things on there that..." "I do not care about your personal life," I interrupted. "I do not care about your affairs or your gossip. I want the conspiracy. I want the proof that you and Darius planned this. I want the proof that you introduced him to Chloe with the specific intent of breaking up my marriage to access my trust fund." She bit her lip. If I give you that, Darius will kill me. He will never forgive me. I laughed. Darius is currently being processed at the Federal Detention Center downtown. He has bigger problems than being mad at you. But you have a choice right now. You can walk out of here with nothing, watch your business get auctioned off piece by piece and explain to your husband why you are bankrupt. Or you can give me the phone and I will reinstate the loan. I will give you a payment plan you can actually afford. You keep the spa. You keep your reputation. She looked at her purse. She looked at me. It wasn't even a contest. Loyalty to Darius had a price tag, and apparently it was lower than the lease on a storefront in Buckhead. She reached into her bag. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the device. She unlocked it. She slid it across the desk to me. There is something else, she whispered, her voice trembling. I picked up the phone. What else? If I give you this, you have to promise me total immunity, she said. You have to promise you won't use this against me in court. You can only use it against him. I frowned. What is on here, Julianne? She looked around the room, lowering her voice to a hush. It wasn't just the money, Zora. It wasn't just the divorce. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? He was getting impatient, she said, tears leaking from her eyes again. He said the divorce would take too long. He said you would fight him. He said the prenup was too strong. He wanted the money now. He owes people, Zora. Bad people. I felt a sickening thud in my chest. Go on. About 3 months ago, he asked me if I knew anyone who could get prescription meds, strong ones. I stared at her. My mind flashed back to the last few months. The fatigue, the mornings I couldn't wake up, the way my coffee tasted bitter sometimes. He said you were stressed. Julianne continued, the words tumbling out of her now like a confession. He said you needed to relax. He asked me to get him sedatives, benzodiazepines. But he wanted the strong stuff, the kind they give to patients before surgery. And you got them for him, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I thought he was just trying to help you sleep, she cried. I swear, Zora, I didn't know. But then I saw the texts he sent to Chloe. He told her that if things went according to plan, he would be a widower by Christmas. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. A widower. He wasn't just trying to rob me. He was trying to kill me. He was drugging me slowly, weakening me, maybe building up to an overdose that would look like an accident or a suicide brought on by the stress of work. Show me, I commanded. She reached over and navigated through the phone. She opened a folder buried deep in her photo gallery. Screenshots, dozens of them. There was a text from Darius to Julianne. Did you get the package? She needs her vitamins tonight. There was a text from Darius to Chloe. Just be patient, baby. The heart attack strategy is risky, but the sleeping pills are working. She is getting weaker. Once she is gone, the trust dissolves to the spouse. We will have it all. I felt like I was going to be sick. The man I slept next to, the man I had saved from poverty, he had been poisoning me. That explained the car accident I almost had last month when I fell asleep at the wheel at 2 in the afternoon. That explained why I had been missing meetings. He was gaslighting me into thinking I was burning out while he was systematically shutting down my body. I looked up at Julianne. She looked terrified. She knew she was an accomplice to attempted murder. I didn't know he was going to go that far, she sobbed. I swear, I just wanted the money. You are going to testify, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached and clinical. You are going to take this phone to the FBI agent who arrested Darius. You are going to tell them everything, but you said I could keep the spa. I stood up. I walked around the desk. I leaned down until my face was inches from hers. You can keep the damn spa, Julianne. But if you don't walk out that door and go straight to the federal building, I will give this phone to the police myself, and I will tell them you were the mastermind. I will tell them you supplied the poison. I will make sure you share a cell with him. Do you understand me? She nodded frantically, grabbing her purse. Yes. Yes, I understand. Go, I said. Now. She ran. She didn't look back. She ran to save her own skin just like I knew she would. I sat back down in my chair. I was shaking. I looked at my hands. They were trembling uncontrollably. He had tried to kill me. The realization washed over me in a cold wave. The embezzlement, the cheating, the humiliation, that was just the surface. Underneath there was a darkness I hadn't even let myself imagine. I picked up my phone. I called Mr. Henderson, the accountant. Henderson, I said. Ms. Banks. Is everything all right? I need you to add something to the file for the FBI, I said. What is it? We are adding conspiracy to commit murder, I said. And Henderson, yes. Tell the agents to check the toxicology report from my last physical, and tell them to get a warrant for the contents of Darius's gym locker. I have a feeling they are going to find a bottle of pills that doesn't have his name on it. I hung up the phone. I turned my chair to look out the window. The sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. I was alive. I was rich. And I was about to bury my husband under so much concrete he would never see the sun again. I took a deep breath. It was the first breath I had taken in years that felt truly clean. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the witness, the prosecutor, and the executioner, and court was in session. The silence in my private office was heavy enough to crush a lesser woman. Mr. Henderson sat across from me, his face pale, and his hands clasped tightly over a thick leather binder. He was the best forensic accountant in the state, a man who had brought down cartels and corrupt senators, yet he looked like he was afraid to open his mouth. The air conditioner hummed a low, monotonous note that grated against my nerves. I took a sip of my cold coffee and gestured for him to begin. I told him I wanted the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I thought I was prepared for embezzlement. I thought I was prepared for greed. I was not prepared for the sheer scale of the rot that had infested the bank's foundation. Henderson opened the binder, slowly sliding a single sheet of paper across the polished mahogany desk. It was a summary of outflows for the last fiscal year. The number at the bottom of the page was circled in red ink. $3 million. I stared at the figure. My brain refused to process it at first. $3 million. That was money meant for the STEM scholarship program for inner-city girls. That was money meant for the pediatric oncology wing at Grady Memorial Hospital. That was money I had donated from my own earnings, trusting my husband to steward it with integrity. He didn't just skim off the top, Henderson said, his voice grave and quiet. He gutted it. I looked up at him, feeling a cold numbness spreading through my limbs. How, I asked. How did he move that much money without triggering an audit sooner? He was clever in a clumsy sort of way, Henderson explained. He set up a network of vendor accounts, shell companies. He created fake invoices for services that are hard to verify, consulting fees, logistics coordination, strategic advisory retainers. They were all billed just under the threshold that requires board approval. He bled the foundation dry, $5,000 and $10,000 at a time, every single day for 3 years. I flipped through the pages of the report. I saw the names of the fake companies: JNC Consulting, Estelle Management Group. The arrogance was blinding. J for Julianne, C for Chloe, Estelle for his mother. He had literally put their names on the shell companies he used to rob me. Where did the money go, I asked, though I was starting to get a sickening picture in my mind. Henderson sighed and pulled out a stack of glossy photographs. He spread them out on the desk like a tarot reading from hell. This is a Bentley Continental GT, Henderson said, pointing to a photo of a sleek black car parked in front of a luxury apartment complex. Registered to Darius Banks. Purchased 6 months ago for $240,000. Paid for by a wire transfer from JNC Consulting. I looked at the car. Darius had told me he was leasing a Lexus. He had told me he wanted to be modest. This Henderson pointed to another photo is a closet full of Hermes Birkin bags and Chanel clutches. We matched the serial numbers from the purchase receipts found in the Foundation's digital trash bin. These bags were shipped to an address in Buckhead. I looked at the address. It was the apartment complex where Chloe lived. I felt bile rise in my throat. He had stolen money from children with cancer to buy $50,000 handbags for a 22-year-old girl who didn't even know how to spell philanthropy. And this, Henderson said, sliding the final photo forward. This is the deed to a 4-bedroom house in Savannah. Paid for in cash 3 months ago. The title is held in the name of Estelle Banks. I closed my eyes. The pieces all fell into place. The reason Mama Estelle had stopped complaining about money. The reason she had been so defensive of Darius. He hadn't just been a good son. He had been buying her silence. He had made his own mother an accomplice to felony theft. He had turned my family, the people I broke bread with, into a crime syndicate operating out of my charity. This is not just a civil matter, is it? I asked, opening my eyes to look at Henderson. He shook his head slowly. No, ma'am. This is wire fraud. This is money laundering. This is embezzlement from a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Because the Foundation accepts federal grants, this falls under the jurisdiction of the FBI. If we file this report, Darius isn't looking at a lawsuit. He is looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. And anyone who knowingly received these funds, including his mother and his mistress, could be charged as co-conspirators. I stood up and walked to the window. The Atlanta skyline stretched out before me, a testament to what hard work and honest business could build. Darius had tried to take a shortcut. He had tried to build a life on the backs of people who actually needed help. He had looked at the money I earmarked for the vulnerable and decided he deserved it more. He stole $3 million, I whispered to the glass. He bought a Bentley while he was telling me we needed to cut back on household expenses. He bought a house for his mother while he was letting me pay his father's medical bills. He bought handbags for his mistress while he was telling me he loved me. It wasn't the money. I could make $3 million back. It was the violation. It was the absolute moral bankruptcy of a man who would look a scholarship student in the eye and shake her hand, knowing he had spent her tuition money on bottle service and jewelry. Ms. Banks Henderson said from behind me, "If we move forward with this, it will be public. It will be a scandal. The Foundation might not survive it." "Let it burn," I said, turning around. "I will rebuild it. I will write a personal check to cover every single cent he stole so the charities don't suffer." But Darius does not get to walk away from this. He does not get to settle out of court. He does not get to apologize and move to another city. I walked back to the desk and placed my hand on the binder. It felt heavy like a weapon. "You said the FBI has jurisdiction," I said. "Yes," Henderson replied. "Then call them," I commanded. "Call the special agent in charge of the white-collar crimes division. Tell them we have a full confession in the form of a paper trail that reaches from Atlanta to the Cayman Islands. Tell them I am fully cooperating, and tell them I want him arrested tonight." Henderson hesitated. Tonight is the gala." I said, a cold smile touching my lips. "The Black Excellence Charity Ball. Darius is receiving the Man of the Year award for his work with the Foundation. He will be on stage. He will be wearing a tuxedo I paid for. He will be holding a trophy he bought with stolen money." "I want the agents there," I continued. "I want them waiting in the wings. I want them to let him give his speech. I want him to feel the applause. I want him to think he has gotten away with it. And then when he walks off that stage, I want them to put him in cuffs in front of every donor, every politician, and every socialite in Atlanta." But Ms. Banks Henderson warned, "That will be a media circus." "Exactly," I said. "He wanted to be famous. He wanted to be a big shot. I am going to give him exactly what he wanted. He is going to be the most famous man in Georgia by tomorrow morning." I picked up the binder and handed it to Henderson. "Go," I said. "Set it up. I have a dress to put on." Henderson took the binder and left the room. I was alone again. I walked over to the mirror in the corner of my office. I looked at myself. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a wife who had been cheated on. I looked like a reckoning. I thought about Mama Estelle sitting in her new house in Savannah thinking she was safe. I thought about Chloe posting selfies with her Birkin bags thinking she had won the lottery. I thought about Darius probably right now practicing his acceptance speech in the mirror adjusting his tie thinking he was untouchable. They had no idea. They were living on borrowed time and the clock had just run out. I checked my phone. Julianne had sent me a text. It was a screenshot of a text message from Darius. Darius. Just hold tight. Tonight is going to change everything. Once I get this award, the investors will be lining up. I will pay you back, Julie. We are going to be kings. I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. He was right about one thing. Tonight was going to change everything. But there would be no investors. There would be no kings. There would only be a man in a tuxedo realizing that his black card had been declined for the very last time. I grabbed my purse and walked out of the office. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. It was time to go to the ball. And I wasn't going to dance. I was going to watch the world burn. The ballroom of the St. Regis Atlanta was a sea of black ties and silk gowns, the air thick with the scent of expensive lilies and old money. I walked in wearing a blood-red dress that clung to my body like a second skin, the color of warning, the color of war. I kept my head high, ignoring the whispers that rippled through the room as I passed. They had all seen the TikTok video. They all thought I was a scorned, bitter woman on the verge of a breakdown. They had no idea that I was actually the executioner arriving for the final sentencing. I scanned the room and found them immediately seated at the center table reserved for the honorees. Darius looked magnificent in a tuxedo I had paid for, his teeth gleaming as he laughed with the mayor. He looked like a man without a care in the world, a man who believed his own con. Sitting next to him, bold as brass, was Chloe. She was wearing a white gown that looked suspiciously bridal, dripping in diamonds that caught the light with every movement. And on his other side sat Mama Estelle, looking like the Queen Mother herself. She was wearing a heavy diamond and emerald necklace that I recognized from the forensic accountant's report. It was a piece worth $80,000 paid for with a check meant for a literacy program in Vine City. She was literally wearing stolen books around her neck. I did not approach them. Not yet. I made my way to the back of the room to the audio-visual booth. My security team had already secured the area. The technician, a young man I had hired personally for the night, gave me a subtle nod. The thumb drive was already loaded. The presentation was cued. I took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and leaned against the velvet wall, waiting for the show to begin. The lights dimmed. The host took the stage, a local news anchor with a perfect smile. He spoke about generosity. He spoke about community. He spoke about the Banks Foundation and its tireless leader, a man who had dedicated his life to uplifting the underserved. I watched Darius stand up as his name was called. The applause was thunderous. He walked to the stage, stopping to kiss his mother, and then, in a move of breathtaking arrogance, he kissed Chloe on the cheek. He bounded up the stairs, accepting the heavy crystal trophy. He stood at the podium, basking in the adoration of the city's elite. "Thank you," Darius said, his voice thick with practiced humility. "This award is not for me. It is for the children. It is for the single mothers working 2 jobs. It is for the families fighting cancer who just need a little hope." I signaled the technician. Darius continued, tears glistening in his eyes. "When I look out at this room, I see partners. I see people who believe that every dollar counts, that every donation goes to saving a life." "Cut the mic," I whispered into my headset. The sound system screeched with a high-pitched feedback loop, silencing the room instantly. Darius tapped the microphone, confused. He looked toward the sound booth. The spotlight that was on him suddenly cut out, plunging him into darkness. A new spotlight snapped on, hitting me where I stood at the back of the room. The crowd turned. A collective gasp swept through the hall as they saw me. The Red Woman, the villain of the internet. I began to walk toward the stage. My heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood floor, the only sound in the cavernous room. I climbed the stairs. Darius looked at me with a mixture of fear and fury. "What are you doing?" he hissed, covering the dead mic with his hand. "Get off this stage. You are embarrassing yourself." I walked past him to the podium. I pulled a sleek microphone from my clutch. It was connected directly to the house system. "I am sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice booming through the speakers, clear and cold. "But my husband forgot to thank a few key sponsors tonight." Darius grabbed my arm. "Zora, stop this. Security." I shook him off. I looked out at the audience. I saw the confusion on their faces. I saw Mama Estelle clutching her emerald necklace. "Darius is right about one thing," I continued. "We need to talk about where the money goes. We need to talk about the lives that were changed." I clicked the remote in my hand. The massive LED screen behind us, which had been displaying the Foundation's logo, flickered and changed. It was not a slide of smiling children. It was a high-resolution scan of a bank statement. The text on the screen was massive. Everyone in the room could read it. Transaction Hermes of Paris Buckhead Village. Amount $52,000. Source of funds: the Mary Jenkins Sickle Cell Anemia Fund. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. I pointed to the screen. "You see that bag Chloe is holding under the table right now?" I said, pointing a finger directly at the mistress. "That is a Birkin. It cost $52,000. And it was paid for with money that was donated to pay for blood transfusions for children with sickle cell anemia." Chloe froze. She tried to hide the bag behind her chair, but the movement only drew more attention. Darius lunged for me, but two of my private security guards stepped out from the wings, blocking him. He stood there trapped on stage, his face turning gray. I clicked the remote again. A new slide appeared. Transaction, Bentley, Atlanta. Amount $240,000. Source of funds: the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Research Grant. The murmur turned into an angry buzz. People were standing up. "Darius drives a beautiful car, doesn't he?" I asked the room. "He told you he leased it. He told me he was humble. But the truth is that car was bought with money meant to fund mammograms for uninsured women in Bankhead. Every time he starts that engine, he is burning the hope of a woman dying of cancer." I looked down at Mama Estelle. She was trying to stand up, but her legs seemed to have failed her. "And let us not forget the matriarch," I said. Click. Transaction Tiffany & Co. Amount $85,000. Item Emerald and Diamond Pendant. Source of funds: the Inner City Youth Scholarship Fund. The room erupted. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated disgust. People were shouting. A woman at the front table, a major donor, stood up and threw her napkin at the stage. "That necklace," I said, looking straight at Estelle. "The one you are wearing right now. That necklace cost 4 college educations. 4 children will not go to Morehouse or Spelman this year because you needed to sparkle tonight." "Take it off," someone screamed from the back. Darius was shaking his head, backing away from the podium. "It is a lie," he shouted, though without a mic. His voice was thin and pathetic. "She doctored the documents. She is crazy." I clicked the remote one last time. The screen filled with a grid. It was a flowchart. It showed the shell companies. It showed the wire transfers. It showed the offshore accounts in his name. It showed the signatures. It was irrefutable. It was a map of his greed. "This is not a lie, Darius," I said, turning to face him. "This is a forensic audit. And do you know who else has a copy of this audit?" He stared at me, his eyes wide with the realization that his life was over. The doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. The heavy thud of boots hit the floor. A team of 12 agents in windbreakers, emblazoned with FBI, marched into the room. They were not smiling. They moved with the precision of a tactical unit. Special Agent Miller, the man I had spoken to yesterday, walked straight down the center aisle. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He walked up the stairs to the stage. He did not look at me. He looked at Darius. Darius Banks. He said, his voice carrying without a microphone. You are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement of federal funds. Darius tried to run. It was a reflex, a stupid animal instinct. He bolted toward the side exit, but my security guard simply stepped aside and let the federal agents tackle him. He hit the floor with a heavy thud. The sound of cuffs clicking shut echoed through the silent ballroom. I watched as they hauled him to his feet. His tuxedo was dusty. His hair was messed up. He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "Mama," he screamed. "Mama, help me!" I looked down at Estelle. 2 agents were standing over her table. One of them was holding out an evidence bag. "Mrs. Banks," the agent said, "we are going to need the necklace and the earrings. They are proceeds of a crime." Estelle let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. She fumbled with the clasp, her fingers shaking so badly she couldn't get it open. The agent had to help her. She sat there, stripped of her jewels, stripped of her dignity, watching her son being dragged away in handcuffs. Chloe tried to sneak away in the chaos. She had made it almost to the kitchen doors when an agent stepped in her path. "Chloe Williams," the agent said, "we have a warrant for your arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and receiving stolen property." She started to scream, a high piercing sound, as they cuffed her hands behind her back. Her white dress caught on a chair as they led her away, tearing the hem. I stood alone at the podium. The screen behind me still glowed with the evidence of their crimes. The room was staring at me. They were shocked. They were horrified. But they were also looking at me with something else. Respect. I leaned into the microphone one last time. "I apologize for ruining the evening," I said, "but I promise to support this foundation with integrity. And sometimes integrity means taking out the trash." I dropped the mic. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. I walked down the stairs. I did not look at Darius as they shoved him into the back of a waiting SUV outside. I did not look at Estelle sobbing at her table. I walked straight out the front doors of the St. Regis into the cool Atlanta night. My driver was waiting. "Take me to the airport," I said. "Where are we going, Ms. Banks?" he asked. "Paris," I said. "I hear the shopping is excellent this time of year. And I have a lot of empty closet space to fill." The chaos that erupted in the ballroom was absolute. It was the sound of 100 silver spoons dropping at once, followed by the roar of hushed whispers turning into shouts. I stood at the edge of the stage, watching the life Darius had built on lies crumble in real time. The FBI agents did not handle him gently. They were not impressed by his tuxedo or the award he had just received. To them, he was just another white-collar criminal who thought he was smarter than the banking system. They spun him around, forcing his chest against the podium, where he had just been bragging about his generosity. Darius was making sounds I had never heard a grown man make. It was a high-pitched, keening noise, a mixture of disbelief and terror. He looked out at the sea of faces, searching for an ally, searching for someone who would stand up and say this was all a mistake. But the mayor had already turned his back. The donors were clutching their purses and checking their phones, desperate to distance themselves from the radioactive fallout of the bank's foundation. Darius realized in that second that he was alone. His charm had expired. His credit was gone. Then came the scream. It cut through the noise like a siren. It was Mama Estelle. She had managed to stand up, knocking her chair over in the process. She was pushing past a waiter, stumbling in her heels, her arms outstretched toward the stage. "My son!" she shrieked. "Get your hands off him! That is Darius Banks. He is a good man." She reached the bottom of the stairs just as the agents were hauling Darius down. She grabbed the arm of the lead agent, clawing at his jacket with manicured nails. "Let him go!" she demanded, her voice cracking with hysteria. "This is a mistake. He didn't do anything." "Ma'am, step back," the agent said, his voice flat and authoritative. He did not shove her, but he did not stop moving. They dragged Darius past her. "Mama." Darius sobbed, his face streaked with sweat and tears. "Mama, Do something. Call the lawyer. I don't have the money. She wailed, panic setting in as the reality hit her. Then she saw me. I was standing near the exit of the stage, watching the procession. I was calm. I was still holding the remote that had exposed their crimes. Our eyes met, and for a second I saw pure, unadulterated hatred. But then the survival instinct kicked in. The entitlement that ran through her veins like poison took over. She lunged toward me, grabbing the fabric of my red dress. "Zora," she screamed, shaking me. "Do something. Look at what they are doing to him." I looked down at her hands on my dress. I did not move. I simply looked at her. "Help him," she begged, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass. "You are his wife. You are supposed to protect him. Stop them, Zora." I gently peeled her fingers off my silk gown. "I am not his wife, Estelle," I said coldly. "I am the victim." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. Then she played her last card. The card she always played. The money. "Daughter-in-law, save your husband," she roared, pointing at the agents who were now almost at the exit. "You are rich. You have millions. You can fix this. Write a check. Zora, pay them whatever they want. You are so rich you could buy this whole building." The room fell silent again. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. They wanted to see if the billionaire wife would crack. They wanted to see if I would save the man who had humiliated me. I stepped closer to her. I wanted her to hear this. I wanted everyone to hear this. "You are right, Estelle," I said, my voice projecting clearly without shouting. "I am very rich." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "But my money is clean money," I continued. "I worked for every dime. I paid taxes on every dollar. I did not steal it from sick children. I did not take it from cancer patients." I reached out and touched the heavy emerald necklace resting on her heaving chest. She flinched, but she did not pull away. "And the money on you," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "is evidence of a crime. That necklace is not jewelry anymore, Estelle. It is stolen property. It is federal evidence." Her hand flew to her throat, clutching the stones. "The police will confiscate the necklace you are wearing," I said. "And the earrings, and the house in Savannah, and the car in the driveway." She gasped, stumbling back. "No, they can't. That is mine." "It was never yours," I said. "It belonged to the people your son stole from. And now the government is going to take it back." Two agents appeared behind her. They had been waiting. One of them held out an evidence bag. "Mrs. Banks," the agent said, "we need the jewelry, now." Estelle looked at me. She looked at the agents. She looked at the exit where Darius had just disappeared. She realized there was no one left to call, no one left to manipulate. The Bank of Zora was closed forever. She let out a sob that sounded like a dying breath and began to fumble with the clasp of the necklace. I watched her hand it over. I watched her strip herself of the illusion she had been living in. I turned my back on her. I walked toward the door. The crowd parted for me, giving me a wide berth. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving the ruins of the Banks family behind me. I had one more stop to make before I left for Paris. I needed to make sure Julianne understood that immunity didn't mean she got to keep everything. The night was young and I had a lot of cleaning up to do. The hangover from the charity ball lasted for months, but not for the attendees. As for Darius, it was a permanent state of reality. The federal indictment came down 48 hours later, charging him with wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Because he had used the offshore accounts to hide assets during a divorce proceeding, the judge denied bail, so he went from the St. Regis Ballroom to a 6x8 cell in the Federal Detention Center. He traded his tuxedo for an orange jumpsuit that didn't fit, and the plea deal they offered him was an insult, but it was better than the alternative. 15 years. He would be 51 when he walked out a felon with no money, no reputation, and no wife to bail him out. Chloe didn't fare much better as she tried to run, making it as far as the Delta terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson, while trying to catch a flight to Miami with a suitcase full of designer clothes she hadn't paid for. She didn't know that her name had been flagged the moment the FBI raided the Foundation's office, and they picked her up at the gate, charging her with conspiracy and receiving stolen property. The Birkins, the jewelry, the clothes, it was all evidence, and she cried in her mugshot, which became the most authentic photo she had ever taken. She rolled on Darius immediately, trying to cut a deal, but there was no honor among thieves, and they were both going down, dragging each other into the abyss. Then there was Julianne, who thought she was safe because she thought her immunity deal regarding the poisoning plot meant she would walk away unscathed, but she forgot that immunity from prosecution is not immunity from consequences. I didn't have to send her husband Marcus the files, because the FBI did it for me when they interviewed him as a potential witness. Marcus wasn't a genius, but he was a proud man, and when he found out his wife had pimped out his brother to a mistress and plotted to kill his sister-in-law for a spa renovation, he didn't scream, he just packed his bags and served her with divorce papers, the same day the bank seized her car. And the spa. Well, I kept my word and didn't send her to prison for the drugs, but I absolutely foreclosed on the business, showing up with the sheriff and a locksmith the day after the gala. Julianne was there trying to loot the inventory, and I watched her being escorted off the premises of the business she had sold her soul to save. I didn't sell it for scrap, though. I gutted it, tearing out the marble and the vanity to turn Lux Haven into the Phoenix House, a resource center for single mothers and victims of financial abuse. Every time Julianne drove past that building in her used Honda, she would see my name on the sign, a permanent reminder that she had bet against the house and lost. 3 weeks later, the dust had finally settled, the assets were secured, and the divorce was being finalized in absentia since the defendant was incarcerated. I stood on the tarmac at the private airfield, the wind whipping my hair where the Gulfstream G650 was fueled, and waiting as a business expense, technically, since I had meetings in Paris and art to buy and a life to live. I climbed the stairs and settled into the cream leather seat where the stewardess poured me a glass of vintage Dom Perignon, which tasted like victory and freedom. I looked out the window as the engines roared to life, watching Atlanta shrink beneath me, realizing it was a city I loved, but it was a city that held too many ghosts, and I needed new air. My personal phone buzzed on the table, and I picked it up to see the screen lit up with a notification of 57 missed calls, all from a restricted number. I knew who it was. It was the collect call line from the federal penitentiary, which meant Darius was calling to beg, or calling to blame, or calling because he had realized that the commissary didn't stalk the kind of life he was used to. I didn't feel anger anymore, nor did I feel sadness. I felt nothing. He was just a bad investment I had finally written off. I pressed the block button, and then I went into the settings and changed my number so he would never hear my voice again, having 15 years of silence to think about the $5,000 bottle of wine that cost him his life. I took a sip of the champagne and closed my eyes, letting the vibration of the jet lull me into a state of calm, as I was done with drama and done with betrayal, and ready to be Zora Banks, the woman who built empires, not the woman who saved men. "Excuse me," a voice said from across the aisle, and I opened my eyes, realizing I wasn't alone in the cabin. Sitting in the seat opposite me was a man who was striking, wearing a suit that was tailored to perfection, not flashy like Darius, but understated and expensive. He had dark, intelligent eyes and a smile that was both charming and dangerous, and he was reading a file that looked suspiciously like a legal brief. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "I just wanted to introduce myself before we land, as it is a long flight to Paris." I looked at him, intrigued despite myself, and asked, "Who are you?" He closed the file and extended a hand, his grip firm and his skin warm as he said, "My name is Julian Thorne. I am the lead prosecutor for the Southern District, and I am the one building the case against your ex-husband." I paused, my glass halfway to my lips, and asked, "You are the one putting him away?" He nodded, his eyes locking onto mine, and said, "I am. And I have to say, Ms. Banks, The evidence you provided was masterful, as I have never seen a civilian dismantle a financial crime ring with such precision. It was impressive. I smiled and said, "I do my due diligence, Mr. Thorne." "I can see that," he said, leaning back looking at me with a curiosity that went beyond professional interest, adding, "There are a few complexities with the offshore accounts that I might need your help with, complexities that might require a long dinner in Paris to untangle." I looked at the prosecutor, realizing he was smart and powerful, and he was looking at me like I was a partner, not a purse. I took another sip of champagne and said, "Well, Mr. Thorne, I suppose I can make time in my schedule, but I should warn you, I have very high standards for my dinner companions." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something that wasn't rage as he said, "I wouldn't expect anything less." The jet climbed higher, breaking through the clouds into the sunlight, signaling the nightmare was over, but the game was just beginning, and this time I was playing with a pro. Zora's journey teaches us a crucial truth. Financial independence is the ultimate shield against betrayal. She proved that protecting your assets isn't about a lack of love, but an abundance of self-respect. While emotional outbursts offer temporary relief, strategic preparation, like her grandmother's trust, provides permanent security. Zora didn't just seek revenge, she demanded justice by refusing to be a victim. Her victory reminds us that we teach people how to treat us, and sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is simply closing the checkbook and walking away with your dignity intact. Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone who underestimated you? Share your story in the comments below and subscribe for more tales of resilience and justice.